Welcome everybody. I think we're going to go ahead and get started now. So welcome to our webinar on APCSA updates. I'm going to turn off the chat now. And so there should be a Q&A tool. You can use that to send us any questions and we'll answer those as the webinar goes on. So I'm turning off the chat now. And if you have any questions, you can submit them through the Q&A tool. Great. So my name is Evelyn and I'm the curriculum lead at CodeHS.
My name is Alex. I'm a curriculum developer and I've been working on the APCSA Nitro course that we'll be talking about today.
And I'm David Burnham. I'm new to the CodeHS team, but have been teaching computer science A for the last couple of years as well.
Great. So we'll all be answering questions. You'll see us in the Q&A tool, and we can also answer some questions live on the webinar. So moving to just an overview of what we'll be talking about today. So we'll be starting off by just going over the updates to the course that College Board has made. So just an overview of the new course exam description. Then we'll talk about the CodeHS CSA courses. So the key differences between the new Nitro course and the older Java Mocha course. And then we'll talk about how to choose the right course between those two. And lastly, we'll just talk about the AP syllabus submission. All right. So first we're talking about the College Board updates. So we're going to be breaking down the changes to the APCSA course from College Board. So earlier this year, they released a new course and exam description, and we'll actually just post that in the chat. We're going to look at the changes in exam topics, the new standards framework, the recommended new units, and the new CSA labs. So even though the new course and exam description does look pretty different, the changes to the actual CSA exam are actually fairly minor. So the course is made up of 40 multiple choice questions and 4 free response questions, as always. The big difference is that interfaces and abstract classes are no longer tested concepts. So you don't need to cover them before the AP test in May. If you still want to cover these topics, you might want to consider teaching them after the AP exam, just to give yourself more time to cover all of the tested topics. College Board has also standardized the free response question topics so that the first question will always be on methods and control structures, question 2 will always be on class, question 3 on array and array list, and question 4 will always be on 2D arrays. So if you've taught this course for a while, you probably know that these are generally the free response question topics, but this transparency should really help new teachers prepare their students for the exam, since you'll know exactly what you need to cover to prepare your students for those free response questions. Cool. So with the new course exam description, there is a complete set of standards, and it's pretty different from the previous course and exam description. So this is intended to make it more clear what College Board expects students to know for the exam. And if you've taught APCSP, the organization of this framework is going to seem pretty familiar because they use kind of the same structure. So the standards framework starts with a top level 4 big ideas. The 4 big ideas for this course are modularity, variables, control, and impact of computing. So the big ideas are the overarching theme of the course, and these ideas are just going to spiral across all of the units in the course. College Board has also put together 5 computational thinking practices, and these are skills that students should build throughout the course. So students should practice and develop these skills throughout the full course, but it might be easier to focus on specific skills at different points in the course. In terms of actual standards, these are the 3 levels of the framework. So enduring understandings is at the top. These are the long-term takeaways from the course, and these are all going to be directly related to one of the big ideas. So they'll be the most closely related to the course theme. And then under each enduring understanding, there's going to be a learning objective or multiple learning objectives, LOs. And these LOs outline what students should be able to do with the content knowledge. And these LOs are going to build towards the high level enduring understandings. And then underneath the LOs are essential knowledge pieces, or EKs. And this is the actual content knowledge that students need to complete the learning objective. And one LO might have multiple EKs. So just to kind of reiterate, EKs are what students need to know, LOs are what students need to do, and EUs are the high-level takeaways that students will hopefully remember even after they've forgotten kind of the essential knowledge pieces. So here's an example of how the big ideas, EUs, LOs, and EKs are related. So under the big idea of control, we have an enduring understanding about how the sequence and combination of variables and operators determine the outcome. So this is the high-level takeaway that is directly related to the big idea of control. And then underneath that EU are several learning objectives that build towards student understanding of that idea. So this is one EU that students should be able to evaluate what is stored in a variable as a result of an expression with an assignment statement. And this is just a clearly outlined student action that connects directly to that enduring understanding. And then underneath that learning objective is the essential knowledge piece. And so this is the content that students need to know to perform that learning objective. So this is the hierarchy of the framework, starting from the big idea and then working down to the specific contents that students need to know. So in addition to creating the standards framework, College Board has put together a recommended sequence of 10 units. So the new course exam description includes full unit guides for each of these recommended units. And that includes standards that should be covered, recommended activities, and more. So one big thing to note here is that this sequence opts for an objects-first approach. And this sequence is only a recommendation, so you're not required to switch up your course if you've been doing it in a certain order and it's working for you and your students. However, College Board did just launch today the AP Classroom for CSA, and that includes just a lot of resources like unit guides and assessments, and you can use these assessments with your students, and it's all going to be organized by the recommended unit sequence. So it will be easier to pick up and use these resources if you're using the College Board sequence, though you can certainly work it in even if you're not following that sequence. And then lastly, College Board just launched 4 new labs for APCSA. So just like the units, these labs are optional. The requirement is that students have at least 20 hours of hands-on lab experience. So there's no mandate for how students meet that requirement, just that they meet the 20 hours. So you can continue to use the old labs, you can use the new labs, or you can use other labs that aren't created by College Board at all. So our courses include labs that we've developed, and we've recently added the College Board labs. So you really have options on how you want to meet on how to meet this lab requirement. All right, so at this point, before we go forward, we'll take any questions that people have about the College Board updates for this course. So Robin asks, if we don't do objects first, can we move the CodeHS units around and not have a problem? So Alex will go into the 2 course options in a bit. But the answer is we do have our Mocha course, which does not use the objects first approach. And so you can use that very easily. The new Nitro course does follow the unit sequence. So that will be objects first. And you might run into kind of sequencing issues if you pull the order around there. But we do have like an objects later course. Robin asks, are the old College Board labs out? Do you mean released or do you mean not used? So the old College Board labs are not being pulled out in any sort of way. So College Board really just wants to give teachers more options for how to fulfill that lab requirement. That doesn't mean that, if you've been using the old College Board labs you can still use them. You would just want to be careful because interfaces and abstract classes are no longer a part of the tested kind of concepts. So you would just want to be careful of that. But if you want to continue to use the old labs, you definitely can. Now you just have 4 more options for completing that lab requirement. Any other questions? Somebody asked, is there a cost to our curriculum? So the curriculum is free, and you can create a teacher account and create classes for free. Both of these courses are available at no cost. All right. If people don't have any other questions, I'm going to pass this on to Alex, and he'll start talking about the 2 different courses that we offer.
All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about the different course choices now. As Evelyn had mentioned, there have been some changes to the unit pacing. As a result, we are creating a brand new course that is aligned to the new College Board pacing structure. So the current course that we have on the site is the APCSA Mocha course. This is the course that was originally released in 2015. This course is aligned to the course standards that College Board has created. So it is aligned in terms of the actual standards that are being assessed, but it is not aligned in terms of the sequence that College Board has recommended moving forward. Another big difference between Mocha and the Nitro course that I'll talk about is that this actually utilizes the CodeHS run method. So we've developed a library that exists on top of the main method so that students who are less familiar with coding or with Java specifically can get started with coding a little bit easier using the run method. We also have a built-in user input function so that students don't have to deal with the scanner at all when they're working through the Mocha course. So, you know, if students are a little less familiar with computer science, if they're brand new to it, or if they, you know, have struggled in previous courses, the run method is a really easy way. It's a low lift way of getting students involved in coding in Java. Not to say that the main method is difficult. This is just a much more, it's just a speedier approach to getting students coding right away instead of having to worry about the syntax or related to Java specifically. If you're interested in the APCSA Mocha course, you can go to codehs.com/course/53 to check that out. The course that we're developing right now is the APCSA Nitro course. So this is a new version of the course that's going to be available tomorrow, August 2nd. So this course is actually going to follow the College Board sequence of units with objects first. So as you might have noticed in Evelyn's unit guide, objects are being taught in Unit 2. In the CodeHS Mocha course, objects are taught, I believe, in Unit 4. So this is something that is substantially different between the 2 courses. We don't think that it affects the difficulty or rigor of the courses necessarily, but it does affect just how students are thinking about coding in Java. So in the Nitro course, students are introduced to objects a little bit earlier. So the transition to object-oriented programming is a little quicker, whereas in the Mocha course, students follow a lot more of logical sequencing in the first couple of units and then are introduced to objects in Unit 4. So there is a transitional period where students have to learn object-oriented programming compared to kind of logical sequencing. This course also utilizes the main method. So instead of using the CodeHS run method that we've developed, it uses main method in Java, and it also uses the scanner class. So students are introduced to both the main method and scanner in the first unit of the course, and are expected to use main method and scanner method throughout, or class, the main method and scanner class throughout the course. So this one, you know, is, you know, if you are to use an IDE outside of CodeHS, you can immediately take any of the code that you're using on CodeHS and run it directly on, you know, Eclipse or BlueJ or another provider. You can access this course tomorrow by going to codehs.com/course/6165. I believe you can actually go to this right now and see a preview of the first 2 units. So if you're interested in seeing it early, you can do that this way. but the first 5 units of the course will be released tomorrow. So choosing the right course. So there are these 2 different courses. Both of them are a little bit different. You might be thinking to yourself, which one should I use? Which one is best for me? And so I'm going to talk a little bit about choosing the right course based off you and your students. So realistically, the answers are going to vary because you know your students the best. You also know your teaching style, and those things kind of directly impact which course is going to be better for you. The questions that you should ask yourself are, well, so first off, the central idea is that both courses are going to prepare students for the AP exam. As I mentioned, both courses are aligned to the College Board standards. The biggest difference is the sequence that the courses actually go about answering those or addressing those standards. So something to think about in terms of which course you should teach is, did you use the AP CSA Mocha course last year? If you're very familiar with the structure of that course and you're not familiar with the structure of our new course and don't feel like you have the time necessarily to invest in learning this new structure, or if you have a lot of other CS courses that you're teaching and you want to just make sure that it's something simple that you can follow, it might be best for you to continue using AP CSA Mocha that you may have started. If you really want the curriculum to follow the unit recommendations by College Board, then you might want to do the AP CSA Nitro course. As Evelyn had mentioned, the College Board has created a series of unit tests or questions at the end of each unit. Those unit questions directly relate to the units recommended by College Board. So if you plan on utilizing any of those questions, it would make most sense to follow the actual unit recommendations, so that way the questions are aligned with the content that students are learning at that time. Another thing to consider is how early in the course you want to introduce objects. Some teachers prefer teaching objects earlier in the course, some prefer to teach it later in the course, and that obviously depends on your students. If you think that it's something that they're going to gravitate towards pretty immediately, or if you think it's something that is a little more challenging and you want to get them to spend a little bit more time working through the curriculum before you have them learn about object-oriented programming, that's something to consider. So if you want to introduce a little bit later, Mocha is probably a better bet. If it's something that you don't mind introducing a little earlier in the course, then Nitro is the course option that you might do. Another thing to consider is how much do you value teaching main and scanner. If you believe that your students, are planning on using Java outside of CodeHS in the near future, then it might be a good idea to use Nitro so students are familiar with main and scanner methods. If you think that you want a lower lift and just get students immediately involved in coding in a less complex environment, then it might be better to start with the Mocha version. Ultimately, what it comes down to is which course you feel most confident teaching. And I think taking a look at what we have in the Nitro course starting tomorrow and evaluating the differences between Mocha and Nitro for yourself and deciding which one you're most comfortable with is probably your best bet. We don't want to recommend one over the other just because it's important to us that you are comfortable with teaching whatever feels right and most appropriate. So thinking about those different questions is the best way to get to the course that you really want to teach. Just to reiterate, right, both courses, Nitro and Mocha, prepare students for the exam, and you should decide which course is best for your students. Okay, so we've got a bunch of questions. I figure that we should answer some of those before we move on. So something that Robin just asked was, Nitro doesn't have Carol code though. So the answer is that the Nitro course will have the intro to programming in Carol, except that that's going to be recommended as a summer assignment for the Nitro course. We're still figuring out where it's going to live. I believe that we're going to put it in the supplemental material or have it as a unit 0 before the beginning of the course. But the idea is that we will have it there for teachers if they're interested in using it as a prerequisite for entering into the actual course. But it's not something that is aligned with the College Board standards. So we are, providing it as an option for teachers, but recommending that it's kind of used as a summer assignment or a supplemental material for students that might be struggling in the initial units when they're going through the Java material.
We have a few other questions. So Ava asked if there's any limits to using the free version. So in terms of curriculum, there are not any limits to use the free version. So you will have the whole course available. We do have a pro version of CodeHS that includes offline activities, in-depth lesson plans, data tracking, easier fast grade tools. But we have a lot of teachers that teach for the full year on free and run successful computer science classrooms. So definitely the pro will make your life easier in terms of grading and planning and all of that, but you definitely can use the free version. Danielle was asking, are the new materials in the Nitro course? Actually, we're getting a few questions, basically adding if there's going to be any updates to the Mocha course. So we are going to be adding more practice. So the new kind of programs that or problems and exercises that we're creating for the Nitro course, we're going to make those available as supplemental units in the Mocha course. We have a question. Robert asked, since this is the first time I'm teaching CSA, should I just use Nitro? I would say that if you're just getting started and you haven't really invested any time in either course, I would probably recommend using Nitro just because you're going to find it a lot easier to use the My AP Classroom resource that just launched. Because our Nitro course is directly aligned to the unit organization that you're going to find in the AP Classroom portal. So you'll be able to kind of use those side by side a lot easier if you use the Nitro course.
So one question that I saw was, is there anything in the Mocha course that was carried over to Nitro? The answer is yes. Some of the activities from Mocha have been carried over to Nitro. The primary difference is that they've been transformed into the main method. So the activities will look a little bit different. The reality is that I would say maybe 25% of the activities from Mocha have been moved to the Nitro course. So the Nitro course is actually a lot of new material, but there are some activities that are still that had previously existed in the Mocha course.
Great. So Robin asked the question, since we're able to add content into either, so that would be using the create tools to make new problems and activities for your students, is there a way to cover main scanner in Mocha? So the answer is yes. So you can create exercises and include those in the course. When you create exercises in Java, you have the option of using Java main or the Java run. And so you would just want to specify that you're creating a Java main exercise type when you create it, and then you could put it in the Mocha course. Got a lot of questions, so just reading through. Oh, this is a good question. So do you feel like you could use the Mocha course as a year-long or semester pre-AP and then Nitro as AP? I would say there's a bit of overlap in terms of the problems used. We definitely didn't make the Nitro course thinking that students would be taking both Nitro and Mocha. It was definitely one or the other. But I would say Carol would be a really good, it's probably more of like a quarter than a semester, but that would be a really good prerequisite to taking the Nitro course.
So I saw a question, is the AP Computer Science A Labs course updated, or are they only in Nitro? The AP Computer Science A Labs course will be updated with the new labs over the next couple of weeks. Currently, the AP CSA Labs course that exists on the site has all of the existing labs, so 11's Picture Lab, Magpie, as well as a couple of CodeHS labs like Battleship, Pokemon Simulation. So those ones are available for either Mocha or Nitro. So you can just enroll your students in the AP CSA Labs course, and the new labs that have just been released, we will be adding those over the course of the next couple of weeks. So you can expect to see those there at some point before the end of the semester.
Let's see. Lorna asked about the speaker notes. So the new slides for the Nitro course do include speaker notes. So Alex has done an awesome job just giving a lot of really great speaker notes. So you can either have your students watch the videos, or you could use the speaker notes to deliver the lectures yourself. The question was, are we adding those to the Mocha course? We are not going to be adding any speaker notes to the Mocha course slides. So you can, definitely use them to lecture with your students, but you will not get speaker notes for that. Tyson asked, as a new CSA teacher, are there any recommendations or reasons for objects early versus late? This really is kind of a matter of opinion. And amongst like Java curriculums, people take both approaches. I think the reason you might teach it later is because they can be a bit difficult to grasp. But if you teach it earlier, you definitely are giving students more time to adjust to that idea. I don't know if you have anything to add there, Alex.
Yeah, I think student comfort with computer science in general can dictate whether or not that's something you introduce earlier versus later. So if students are familiar with other languages such as JavaScript or Python and have been coding for a little bit of time, it might make sense to bring in objects earlier, so that because they've been working on programs that are a little more logical in terms of their sequencing, earlier into the course you might say, okay, Java is done generally using object-oriented programming, so this language is a little bit different, so that there's a way that students can differentiate between those different languages, ones that they had learned previously, and then Java. If students are kind of new to coding and are unfamiliar with just the different styles of languages, it might be best to start with logical sequencing and then have students go through objects a little later in the course, so they get familiar just with how they can program using logical statement execution, and then get introduced to object-oriented programming, so they get a better sense of how those two systems can exist and be different, and kind of evaluate the pros and cons of either. So I think it depends on personal preference, and I also think it depends on kind of your students and where they're at.
Thanks, Alex. We have a question from Kenneth asking about our embedded IDE. So we have our own IDE called Abacus, and yes, it does auto grade. So any of the exercises that are in our Java course are going to have auto graders. If you're creating, you have the option of using our IDE and create exercises or different materials on top of the courses that we offer. And in that case, you have the option of writing your own auto graders. Christopher asks if there's any limit to creating playlists or supplemental exercises. I believe the answer to that is no, we're not limiting playlists. So you should be able to make unlimited playlists, but I think that's the case. So just to clarify, the first 5 units, that's going to be available tomorrow. So we will send out a message to teachers with instructions on how to enroll in the course.
So I see a question from Robin. Just there's a concern about whether or not the labs will basically come at the time that students are learning those particular strategies or those concepts. So the new AP-CSA labs, as we add them to the course, we will pay close attention to which concepts are needed in order to do those labs. And then as we are adding them, we will make recommendations for when they should be offered. So this is something that you'll notice in the lesson plans. So in the lesson plans that we offer on CodeHS, we'll make suggestions about when to use the particular labs that are being offered from the College Board. So for example, if one of the labs exclusively relies on using arrays, that comes in Unit 6 in the Nitro course. In the lesson plans for Unit 6, we might suggest at the end of Unit 6 going through one of the labs, so that way students are actually practicing the concepts that they're learning directly with the labs. So we're going to make a pretty concerted effort to indicate which labs should be done after which units, and that's something that you'll be able to find in the in the lesson plans directly. And we will most likely, so I think that's like the general place that you can find that. And then in the labs course, in the description, we'll also include where in the course they should be implemented.
Yeah, and also just to add on to that, in the course exam description, the unit guides are also included there. And since we're following the units in the unit guide for Nitro, in the unit guides, they basically are very explicit about where each lab would go. So you can also refer to the College Board unit guide. We had a question about Abacus running separately from CodeHS, so they can use it at Abacus at computer competitions. It is web-based, so there's no way to download it, unfortunately. Danielle asked, will you be adding new materials to the Mocha course? Or when will you be adding new materials to the Mocha course? So that should be coming in the next few weeks. Those will be added as supplemental materials. So you will need to look in the supplemental section to find those materials. All right. We do not have any other questions open. So I'm going to continue for now. But if you have any lingering questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat box. And we will be waiting for a few minutes after the webinar just to make sure everybody gets their questions answered. So I'll be talking about syllabus submission because this is a bit of a special case this year. So because CSA is one of the courses that has an updated course exam description, you do not need to complete the syllabus submission for this school year, so 2019 to 2020. For authorization to offer the course, you basically just need to complete the course audit form and then download the unit guide. So you do not need to submit an approved syllabus this year. And then in the 2020-2021 school year, so the next school year, you will need to, the syllabus submission will resume, and we will have an approved syllabus that you can use if you're using our curriculum. So that's just a small note. At this point, that's all we have for you. So we'll stick around for another few minutes just to answer questions if people have any. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining the webinar, and good luck as you get ready for the school year.